I had technical difficulties with power out, and then trying to transfer a online Word document onto that app, it wouldn't go on. And I'm counting down to the minutes, trying to get it down, and I clicked on the wrong one. So you'll figure it out.
I will.
This is not all, I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you like resubmit it or?
I can't.
Email me?
I'm gonna email you. I was gonna ask you today what you want me to do.
I'd say send me the correct
one. Yeah, cause it's like half of it. It wasn't the one. I think I changed the name and everything to it. I don't know how it happened. I was just panicking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, what's going on?
Been there. You're good.
My son's sleeping and I'm like, I need help.
Like, wake up.
Somebody help me.
I know we'll have a couple people joining via Zoom, and I'm sure we'll have a couple people coming in a few minutes late.
Yeah.
Especially with that over. Worst case, you just get a one-on-one lecture.
I mean,
it won't be awkward.
It's my favorite subject.
Good.
We are good. Yep. This is definitely by far my favorite.
I teach a Tuesday, Thursday morning class, and it's in Coopersville with a bunch of dual enrolled high schoolers. Yeah. So hello, welcome.
You got us.
Also, I feel like we've been bamboozled. They have way better technology in this room.
It's cool.
I was like,
can we just stay here then?
We might have to if they can't figure out the projector. They couldn't even figure out what building I was in.
Figure out a new seat, you know?
I know.
Well, we were all adjusted over there.
Okay, I'll stay by the emergency exit.
Okay.
I'll take one for the team if there's a school shooter.
Thank you. It's like sitting at the emergency exit on a plane. It's like a lot of responsibility.
Yep.
I gotta ask, since it ain't that many people here, I did wind up sending my paper in like 2 minutes late.
I was just talking about it.
It's late.
I had technical difficulties. It almost.
It wasn't. I
That's
shouldn't have waited that long to even be. I know. I do.
True, but I think we've all been there.
Yeah, and I did my test was submitted at.
I know, I've been panicking.
I'm like right a minute after.
Like, am I gonna look once for that?
It's like literally like 2:01 or 2:02. I mean 12:01.
Not gonna lie, it's the submissions I see that say turned in at 3:02 a.m. that I'm like, oh no, someone had a very rough night. Like,
It's just having technical things. Not figure out how to send it.
Your voice, I wouldn't have known.
No, I'm gonna get in the hallway.
I wrote on the board in there that we're across the hall,
Yeah, but
I didn't even go in there because
that's what I was gonna say. I was about to leave, not even thinking.
no, yeah, I'll just keep talking because I'm loud as I'll get out, so y'all can.
the first time y'all were in here.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, like 5 minutes ago.
My projector isn't working in there, and I called IT. First of all, the IT guy was like, "Rude as hell," until I was nice, and then he was like, how's your day going? And I'm like, I was like, now? But yeah, I asked like, so you
hungry.
Yeah, I'm like, you can send somebody out, and they're like, yeah, but we can't guarantee it'll be before your class ends. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna sit here with them for an hour and a half.
And what are the
maybe? Yeah, I was like, I just called security. I was like, can we get it in the other room across the hall?
That works.
Yeah, it works. It works.
More than one way.
Yeah, no, I asked because I didn't. I was like, maybe someone already has their little preferred seat. Then.
No, you're good. Yeah, you can sit down. I'm loud enough. I'm sure if we have any other stragglers, they'll find us. So we are in week 13, where I assigned some shorter articles, but 3 readings. We clerk in chapters 3 and 26 from a much larger textbook that I don't make you buy. Whenever I only use like 1 or 2 chapters from a textbook, I know how expensive those suckers are. I'm like, no, I'll just do the illegal thing and scan them and share them. I bought the book, so, they got some money from me. And then the Hall PDF. So we're going to talk about Indigenous or Native America, mostly focusing on the United States, but we might get a little Canada sprinkled in. Realistically, Mexico counts as well. A lot of times when we talk about Native America, we leave off Mexico. There's a very large Indigenous population in Mexico. So yeah, that kind of drives me nuts when people say Native America and it's just Canada and the US. And I'm like, hello, hello.
All the Americas, please.
Yeah, technically you could include Central America, South America, all Native Americans by definition. So what we're gonna go over today, to keep it kind of short and sweet, realistically, you can do an entire research paper on this subject. You can do a whole class on this subject. You can get your PhD in this subject. I'm trying to fit what I can into a 1 week little lesson. So I'm saying that to say, I'm gonna give you a very brief history, like brief anthropological history of how they got here. I'll touch on whose land we're on here in Michigan. I'm gonna talk about Thanksgiving. I might ruin it a little bit, not all the way, just a smidgen of ruining it, just a little. You can still eat your turkey,
Doesn't
don't.
that term Indian ever come from Thanksgiving?
It comes from a misunderstanding of Native American reciprocity, where many Native American groups thought if you meet a new group, you should share gifts. So they met the European settlers and said, welcome to our land, here's a gift, and got nothing in return. So a lot of them said, well, if you're not gonna play fair, you don't get your gift, and took it back. And the Europeans thought, well, that's rude. And the Native Americans thought, no, you're being rude.
It was the right timeline.
Yep, you're right along there. I'll mention the Trail of Tears, but I will tie that in to what is commonly known as the Irish potato famine. I'm gonna bring up boarding schools, so we are gonna touch on a few not fun topics, because unfortunately with the history of Native Americans, there is a lot of oppression, and I don't wanna gloss over it, but I will bring that up. I'll bring up 1960s and 1970s activism, misrepresentation within media, which is a much broader topic, and the land back movement, which is tied into the Hall article, where a lot of times we hear land back and think, oh my gosh, they're kicking us all off. And that's not what it is. But part of me sometimes, as much as I love my country, sometimes I think you're gonna kick me off to my ancestral land of Europe. Yeah, they have free healthcare. I would love that, actually, a free trip.
I feel like isn't Europe going through some drama right now? I don't know if I want.
The whole world is going through drama.
I'm gonna stay right here in the middle of the woods and not go anywhere.
I do love it here. I'm in no way trying to defect. But you know, if they said we're offering you a free trip to the south of France, that sounds kind of tempting. I'd be like, yeah,
They may not.
okay.
Yeah.
They just might not let me back in. They might be like, and now you're France's problem. I'm like, well, all right.
At least you'll get some good food.
Now, Native American Heritage Month is November. That's just a little factoid for you. We usually try to have different heritage months where we recognize our heritage or people that have it. Myself and my fun ancestry, allegedly, there is some Native American ancestry. Now, what my sister and I are doing is the fun game of who and from where did they come. Realistically, I believe it was my great grandpa, but I do not know which tribe he came from, which is why usually if somebody asks me my ethnicity, I just say white. Because until I have like actual proof that I have that ancestry, I don't want to just be out here saying, I'm part Native American. And then I do a DNA test and they say, no, you're not. And I think, great grandma, what did you lie about? Yeah.
That happened to me. I thought my whole life I was like 25 to 30% Native American, but
Yeah.
come to find out I'm more African American than all of that. So
Yeah.
I've got like 8 different regions of Africa in me. And
That sounds like me with Europe. I'm like,
then I go through the Ireland and Scotland through the slave trade, and then we got all the European crap. What calls my grandma because she's just like a big old mix of all the European countries.
well, my family and we all call ourselves European mutts. We're mutts, just Northwestern Europe. Just circle it. That's like,
Trash mutts.
yeah. I'm like,
You're not really trash, but
My situation's different. They're like, here I'll be like, well, I'm American, I'm here, right? No, like I wouldn't do that. But like, cause when I go over there, they're like, you're not from here, you're from over there. And I'm like, oh my God.
uh-huh.
Since I was a kid. And then I deliver packages for FedEx. Real quick, someone was like, what? They always ask me.
What are you?
Yeah, or like what if like my I've
Are
been
you
told-
Samoan?
They asked me if I was Indian at Speedway when I used to like have my long hair. This was like 5 years ago. And then someone asked me if I was mixed with some other Oriental thing a long time ago. But anyways, I'm like, I'm Mexican. He's like, no way, dude. I want to pay for your
DNA test.
I guess you sent off. I'm like, I don't trust those. He's like, I'll pay for it. He offered and I'm like, no. He's like, no, I'm serious. You got like all kinds of stuff going. You're mixed with a bunch. Just know.
Unfortunately, there was such a history throughout the world of like one group being scared of another group. So when that scary group tries to come in as immigrants, they lie and are like, ooh, I'm not the scary one. I'm the scary one's neighbor. Ooh, and then you're like, oh, less scary, okay. And then their ancestry gets passed down of telling everyone, we're not the scary one. And then you take the DNA and you're like, I am the scary one. It is me.
I'm just like, I'm this. It's my father. It just says this, and then this says that, and that's it.
Yep.
And everyone wants to know, and I'm just like, I think this makes all kinds of crap.
It's the smallest class.
I
we've
think
had.
all of us.
It is a small class. There's a few people joining via Zoom, and I know one or two have emailed me that they're out sick. So realistically, for a moment, we thought it was just going to be a one-on-one, and I thought, well, this is going to be very intimate. Just like this is a one-on-one class.
Anyone else get sick here?
I think a couple.
I got a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Something going on, but it wasn't like throw up or I've been
That's good.
snotty.
Yeah.
It's allergies.
Yeah.
I'm hoping.
Let's hope.
Gone. It was a couple weeks.
So I mentioned that I would explain briefly how the indigenous populations came into at least North America as well as South. Realistically in anthropology, there's a few different theories, but for a long time, the theory that most of us agreed on was called the out of Africa model. And it's named that because we do know that human civilization and humans originated in East Africa. That area is actually called the cradle of life because of how many of our ancestors we found there. So that part we all agree on pretty much. I mean, I'm sure there's like 5 anthropologists out there that are like, no. But for most of us, we all agree. Where it gets kind of hanky and we're starting to change our theory is when and how people came into North and South America. For years, when we ask the indigenous populations, they'll say either we've been here a lot longer than you thought, or they'll say we've always been here. Anthropologists, though, are scientists. We like empirical evidence. So now we're finally finding actual like archaeological proof of this, where we are seeing sites in like New Mexico and down in Chile where people got there like 10, 20,000 years earlier than we originally thought. So clearly they did get there a lot sooner than we thought for a long time. So we're starting to change that theory, but it's kind of slow going in the academic world. When it comes down to what term do we use, I oftentimes use the word indigenous. Indigenous is also used to talk about plants and animals. It basically just means who was here first. Of whoever settled this land first gets the name of indigenous. So like there are indigenous white people. We had to come from somewhere. We just manifested one day and we've been a pain in the butt since. I say that with love of my own people, but yeah, sometimes, no. We did come from somewhere. There are indigenous white folks, but a lot of times because of colonialism now, most of white people are living in areas where they're not indigenous. And so you have that little switch up between who is indigenous and isn't. When it comes to what name to use for indigenous, at least North Americans, there's a few acceptable titles: Indigenous, Native, Native American, American Indian. If you're in Canada, you might use First Nations. A lot of us have been taught that calling them Indian is incorrect, and it does come from an incorrect or a misunderstanding. Columbus thought he was going to India, called them all Indians. It stuck for like 400-600 years. Realistically, I know quite a few Indigenous people that call themselves Indians and are fine with being called that. It has a lot of history now, so some kind of prefer that. And a lot of like identifying documents use the term Indian, like the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So realistically, I kind of leave it up to the individual. If you have a friend that calls themselves an Indian and they want to be called an Indian, go with it. If you have a friend that says, "Oh, I hate that word," then respect your friend. That's, I feel like that's a pretty big rule of thumb for anybody. Be respectful to your friends. Trying to find an image of Native North America. The frustrating thing is, I kind of mentioned this, a lot of the maps leave off Mexico, and that drives me bonkers because Mexico is part of North America, and there is a large population of Indigenous people in Mexico. Now, they have a slightly different history, maybe than America or US, I should say, or Canada, but still Indigenous North America. This map I include because it just kind of shows how many different nations there have been historically. At one point, there were over 500 nations in North America. Now, unfortunately, a lot have dwindled and either have no members or very, very few, but there are a lot. A lot of times too, if we're non-Indigenous, I'm going to use myself as an example, oftentimes if you close your eyes and picture a Native American, many of us, because of media, are thinking of usually a man, usually wearing buckskin and a headdress. And yeah, did that individual exist? Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Still does. But that is very specific to the Plains Native Americans. The Anishinaabe people of Michigan didn't dress like that. The Tlingit over in the Pacific Northwest don't dress like that. It's very specific, but it's popularized because of movies and TV. This is just a little visual moment where you can see the varying differences in dress and appearance. One group in the center, like top center, there's two pictures of Seminole people. So I'm not an expert in the history, but if I remember correctly, basically for a while in the US during the Atlantic slave trade, Florida was kind of its own area, which Florida's kind of its own area now, but it was kind of its own area, and they weren't enacting slavery. So basically, if the enslaved African people could escape and get to Florida, they could start a new life. But once you get there, you don't have any belongings, you don't have any money. So who's going to take you in and help you out? The Seminole. And a lot of the Seminoles said, "Hey, come hang out with us, come live with us. We'll get you back on your feet." And what happens when you move in with a community? Sometimes you fall in love. Now, realistically, babies can happen without love, but we're going to say they all fell in love. So a lot of Seminole people today also have a lot of African ancestry. You have a lot of mingling there, which was basically two oppressed groups coming together and being like, solidarity, we can live together.
The Irish and the natives.
I will get to that, but you are correct.
It's my family genes.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah. I've got Irish in me as well. And yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's,
Found out I did.
yeah, see, I loved the movie Sinners. And I loved the music and the like culture of it, of showing the different cultures and different timelines. Loved that. But I also feel bad because I grew up with like Irish folk music. So when the bad guys are singing their Irish tunes, I'm sitting there like, I'm sorry, that's a really good song. I was like, I'm not rooting for them. I'm just like, dang, that's a really catchy one. All right. I was like, I know they're the bad guys, but they got a good song going. So whose land are we on here in Michigan? It can get a little tricky. A lot of times with anthropologists, we'll just say Anishinaabe, usually because the three fires the three groups that have lived in Michigan since the dawn of time, if you want to be poetic, make up the council called the Three Fires. They all speak a language that originates from Anishinaabe. So that is why anthropologists a lot of times will use that term, but you'll hear that with the Native Americans as well. They are the Ojibwe, also known as Chippewa, the Odawa, also known as Ottawa, and the Potawatomi. Colonizers, people who look like me, have a long history of refusing to learn new names. So you can see how we kind of got a slight mispronunciation where I'm not Chippewa from Ojibwe. It's a stretch, but I get it. Odawa into Ottawa. Okay, that one I kind of get. Like I pronounce my double T's like a D too. It does kind of make me chuckle that Potawatomi is unique enough that we said, we're not changing that. That's fun. That's fun to say. No, we're going to learn that one. I'm like, okay. All three live in Michigan. A lot of times there is overlap. So realistically, most of them were foragers and lived a more nomadic lifestyle historically. So they don't have the same strict boundaries and borders like we do nowadays. So when we look at the history of whose land was whose, their understanding is like, well, that's not how we operate. We don't have property. We just kind of mingle a little bit. The white part in the top of Lower Michigan doesn't mean no one lived there. It just kind of means, I believe the understanding is like, kind of all of them shared it in different seasons. So it's kind of enough of an overlap. They just left it white. But they made it look like just nobody lives in that part of Michigan. I know. It's where the little river band is.
A lot of lakes over there.
I was,
Sorry. I'm like, that's not good.
So speaking of Mount Pleasant though, I am gonna get into Mount Pleasant a little bit. So the Little River Band of Ottawa Indians, even though I said technically it's Odawa, they prefer the name Ottawa. So if that's what they prefer, that's what we're gonna go with. Technically, for anthropology, a band is a small number of people who form a fluid, egalitarian community and cooperate in activities such as subsistence, security, ritual, and care for children and elders. Usually, a band consists of about 30 to 50 members. Realistically, what I'll get into in a moment is how big their numbers are now. They are much larger than 30 to 50 members nowadays. But because historically we named them the Little River Band of Ottawa Indians, they're keeping that name, even though as far as anthropologists go, they wouldn't count technically as a band. It's a weird little loophole, but again, it's what they want to be called, so I'm cool with that. This book that I had you read from, McClurkin, it's a pretty interesting book. It's a textbook, but it was basically made in partnership with anthropologists, historians, and the actual Little River Band of Ottawa Indians. Basically, when they were trying to get, oh my gosh, I'm completely blanking on the word and it's on like the next slide. But basically when they were trying to get federally recognized as a tribe or a band, they needed to compile a written history. And so they partnered with anthropologists and historians to publish an official written history. Part of it is in this book. So it's a pretty cool book. That's why I use it. I don't make you buy it because we only read 2 chapters, but I at least use it. It gets into more of the history of this band, including back in 1825 when we had colonizers coming into Michigan, settling the area. I'm going to take a drink and then feel free to laugh at me. I do not speak Anishinaabe Moin, so I'm going to do my best, but I'm probably going to mess up the name. The name is Ogema Nohokakwakashik. I did my best. Probably somebody else can do it way better than me. Yeah, there's a lot of syllables, and because it's not my native language and I've never studied it, I'm sure I'm messing it up a little bit. But I do my best. He invited Baptist missionaries to build a blacksmith shop and mission at Bauting, which is now known as Grand Rapids. At this area, as Grand Rapids was being built up, it was basically a small village. You had Native Americans living in the area that had been living there for many, many generations. They invited this Baptist missionary to set up shop. Yes, he was doing smithing, but he was also a missionary. So he was preaching and trying to convert people. Into the 1830s, Michigan's population was booming, mostly from settlers occupying the land around the Kalamazoo and Grand Rivers. We started to come in so quickly that we just pushed out the Ottawa Indians and pushed them further north. Now, love happens and marriages happen, and marriages between the white settlers and the Native Americans definitely happened. That is what I think happened in my family, especially with the French heritage. A lot of French colonizers came over here and were like, I'm single, you're pretty. I bet our kids would be pretty. We should find out. It happened a lot with French settlers. Part of it was because a lot of English settlers were families, so you came over with your family, versus French settlers, they were sending a lot of single men, not only single men, but a lot. And they got here and then wanted to settle down, but not too many people were sending single ladies. So they said, well, I will find a single lady in these little villages and towns. Marriages between colonizers and Ottawa was somewhat common for the time. It was still usually frowned upon. A lot of white people don't like it when we have interracial marriages. That was definitely correct for the 1830s. In what is now known as Ionia, there were so many colonizers coming in that many of them were just straight up purchasing Native American houses that looked like what's on the screen. A lot of settlers would have looked at that and said, oh, I'm not living in that. That's savage, as they would have said. That's too awful for me. And these Ionia settlers said, yeah, I don't care. Are you willing to, I will fork over money if I can live in your house. And some of them were saying, well, we're getting pushed out anyway, and I know how to make another house. So yeah, give me the money. I will, you can have my house if you want it that badly.
It looks like cheap bills. No bills in there.
Well, and it's not supposed to be permanent. It's supposed to be temporary, that you can like take it apart and locate. So yeah, the settlers would have to build their own house eventually.
It was slowly taking land, correct?
Yeah, they were taking land. Reaffirmation, that was the word I was looking for. Sorry, my brain completely, I kept wanting to say recognized, and I'm like, close, not the word I wanted. So reaffirmation is celebrated every year on this anniversary. It was first signed into law September 21st of 1994. You do not have to memorize the actual law name with that string of letters and numbers. Know what reaffirmation is and when it happened, but the public law 103-324, don't worry about that part. I'm not gonna make you remember that. I can't even remember that. I couldn't even remember the word reaffirmation for a second. My brain. So what this law did was basically recognize federally that this band had sovereignty, meaning they are allowed to kind of make their own laws. Now, realistically, they do still have to follow a lot of the federal laws in place, but where it can get tricky is, for a while, the reason why we have a casino up in Manistee is, for a while, any kind of gambling was illegal in the US unless you were on Native American land. And so a lot of tribes saw that loophole and said, oh, people love gambling. And if we build a casino on our land, it's federally not a problem and we get to rake in the money. And for a lot of these nations, they had been dealing with poverty for a long time. So that was a big boon for them. It doesn't mean they're all rolling in the dough. That is something else I've heard is somebody thinks that like every single Native American is getting money from the government just for being Native American. I'm like, no. I trust me, there's a lot of Native Americans that will make that joke on TikTok, like, are you guys getting paid? Like, I'm not getting paid. Are you getting paid? Like,
Yeah.
now, the current band, there's over 3,000 members. So a band is 30 to 50. Clearly, this is way bigger than an anthropological band. But because we've had that name for so long, they're going to keep it. They are, many of them, I should say, not every member, but many of them are politically active and working with activism, especially around Manistee, Michigan, and especially around environmental issues. A lot of Native American ancestry comes down to stewardship of the land. Do you have something?
One of my business partners I work with, he's a professor at Grand Rapids Community College, and he actually partners with one of the tribal colleges up in Mount Pleasant, I believe it is.
Okay.
And he does all their geology talks and like teaches them horticulture specialists and teaches them how to grow like the old indigenous people back in the day.
Yeah.
Educating people on their old ways and stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love keeping it alive and kind of the resurgence. That's cool. Yeah, a lot of the activism has to do around with land, of keeping water clean, keeping land free, keeping data centers off the land because they're upsetting the land and the water. I do enjoy the jokes on the internet of people saying, I'll replace AI, and then they chug a bottle of water and give you a wrong answer. And I'm like, that does seem like what AI is doing half the time.
Or you go to critique something and then, okay, can't do this for
Yeah, oh, can't.
48 hours. And wait.
I do that too. So a lot of times they will work either with or sometimes against EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. Around 2004, partnered with EPA, they started releasing sturgeons back into the rivers. Sturgeons are really, really big fish. And it used to be that our rivers were chock full of sturgeons. And then what happened is, again, people that looked like me showed up and said, these fish are delicious, and overfished them. So then we kind of pushed them out and they were no longer in the rivers. Now there is it's still not what it used to be, but it's a better population of sturgeon out in our rivers. Occasionally, they will partner with the Three Fires and have a grand council where members and elders of the Ottawa, the Ojibwe, and the Potawatomi come together and discuss the historical relationship as well as the modern relationship, how they can work together for either activism or education or teaching the youth. So, keeping the languages alive, farming, things like that. And of course, they do have the casino. The Little River Casino Resort. It brings a steady income to the band, and it is the largest employer in Manistee, Michigan. So you don't have to be Indigenous to work there. There are a ton of people that work there that are not. And a lot of people in Manistee, that's their main income source. So if you like gambling, go check it out. If you're a nerd like me, there is a small museum in there about... It's awesome, yeah.
All the little statues and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. I've been to that casino once. I am very thankful that gambling does not appeal to me. I literally brought $20, and when the $20 was gone, I said, okay, now what are we doing? And my friend said, well, get more money out. And I said, no, I just lost $20. Like, I have nothing to show for it. Like, I don't get it. Yeah.
I would have done that the first time I learned to only bring 50 to $100 because the first time I went, I ended up emptying my bank account completely, and
Can't you use
I
the
realized
cards?
it. I was drunk, so I didn't realize it.
See, and that's the thing, they give you alcohol
Yeah.
and then they say, oh, you can use your debit card at the machine and you're not paying attention. Yeah, that's where they get you. No, that is somebody else told
I was
me,
there so
like, take
long,
out
too.
cash.
I was there so long too that I maxed it out one day, then at like 5 o'clock in the morning I could go again and start swiping it again. And I just
That's no.
no, I don't.
Hang out in the museum.
Yep, just
I never got. I just lose like 20-30 bucks. I'm like, I'm done.
Yep, I'm done. I'm good.
I'm glad my bills were paid that week.
That's good. That's good.
It wasn't. That would have been bad.
I won 300 bucks.
That's cool. See, I get, maybe I would have been more addicting if I won, but I just lost money. So I was like, well, this wasn't fun at all.
I still didn't pull. It still didn't.
The
really-
last time I did go though, I only brought $40, put 20 in the machine, and won like $300 right away. And I was like, I'm drinking the rest of the night, not doing nothing.
I'd call it a win. So we can't, unfortunately, talk about Native America without also talking about Mr. Columbus. This is ripped from The Good Place, which was a cute show in my opinion, but saying that Columbus was in the bad place. So a lot of us were taught as little kids, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. And he did, and it rhymes, and it's easy to remember. But what we usually leave off in like elementary school education is what Columbus did when he got here, which was he, first of all, was not the first to discover America. He wasn't even the first European to get here. Once he got here, he enslaved the indigenous population and was incredibly violent and terrible to them. He enslaved and killed so many that is one of the reasons why the Atlantic slave trade was so popular, because they had no more indigenous people to enslave. And so in like the islands around like Haiti and such, where Columbus was, they pretty much decimated the population and were left with nobody left to enslave. So they said, we'll bring people to enslave. It's not the only reason why the Atlantic slave trade was popular. I'm not saying it's all Columbus's fault, but a lot of it might have been.
Good contributor.
Yeah, he didn't help. He also brought diseases that the Native Americans couldn't fight off. And yeah, he brought a lot of diseases that unfortunately, when you don't have the immune system for it, it's hard to fight off. Realistically, we don't have to look back to 1492 for that. We can just look back to 2020, how quickly COVID spread because we didn't have the immunity for it at the time. Now I'm going to ruin Thanksgiving just a little bit of ruining Thanksgiving. Okay, so a lot of us, especially if you're old like me, I love saying I'm old. I know I'm middle-aged, but whatever. I definitely participated in something that looked like this back in the 80s and 90s, where I probably had a paper feather on my head and said, I'm an Indian. In fact, I know I did because my sister and I found photos and I said, dear God, don't put those on the internet. We had a good laugh where you kind of have to laugh because the damage was already done and I can't go back in time and educate 7-year-old me better. All I can do is be better moving forward. But a lot of times I understand celebrating the first Thanksgiving with little kids because you romanticize it. You make it sound like it was only a happy meal where everybody shared. And that's a great lesson to teach little kids. Where it can be problematic is when we keep that moving into higher education. So how did Thanksgiving become a national holiday? The first Thanksgiving did happen, I believe, 1621. And then over the next 2 decades, we basically built on the lore. We romanticized it. We talked about how peaceful it was and that it was the beginning of a beautiful relationship between colonizers and Native Americans. Nothing bad happened. Don't look at history. Everything was great. That lore kept building and building. So people were constantly talking about the first Thanksgiving. Then we had a little something called the American Civil War, and President Lincoln was kind of desperate to try and unite the country. So right smack dab in the middle of the Civil War, he declared a National Thanksgiving Day. And I believe it was in November. Yes, November 26, 1863. That unfortunately did not magically solve the Civil War. We still had some more fighting to do, but we kept celebrating it in subsequent years. We would sometimes debate when it should land. In 1940 and 1941, there were 4 Thursdays in November. So we had a big disagreement, and FDR, president of the time, officially said, okay, it'll be the last Thursday in November. That is Thanksgiving. And the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade has been a tradition since 1924. It's been a tradition in my house for me since I lived on my own in my 20s. I did not grow up watching the parade because my mom was always the host for Thanksgiving, and her rule was, if you're up that early, you're going to be put to work. And so I would be a little curmudgeon and say, well, I don't want to help. So I would just like, oh, I'm still sleeping. So yeah, other kids would say, oh, did you watch the parade? I'm like, no, because if I was up, I was going to be put to work cleaning or peeling potatoes or something. Oh. Now, on the next slide, I have a couple of images from not the first Thanksgiving Day parade, but one of the first in the 20s. And we have always done the giant character balloons, but they're honestly a little creepy, the ones from the 20s. I think it's the teeth. The teeth are what make the fish creepy. Yeah. I think my favorite historical balloon disaster is the Barney balloon from the 90s. That got stuck and ripped and everyone like panicked. It shouldn't be funny, but it is. It's funny because I don't think anyone got hurt. I think they're fine, or it was minor injuries, but yeah. Now, as I'll get into on the next slide, harvest festivals are not new. Tons of communities have a harvest festival. Makes sense. If you are in an agricultural community, you know that you have a growing season, and you have a season where things will not grow, winter for us. So if you're in North America and you're an agricultural community, it makes sense for the last harvest to have some sort of festival. One, you probably have an abundance of food that you can share with everybody. And two, you're giving thanks to a bountiful harvest. And it's also, if you think of Michigan winters, in small communities, it's probably going to be the last time you're going to see everybody for a few months because it's going to be cold. You're going to stay in your house. You're not going to be doing a festival. So harvest festivals are not new. We have centuries of celebrations of a good harvest and the last hurrah before the harsh times of winter. The fabled first Thanksgiving did happen in 1621 rather than an afternoon or evening dinner. My family, for some reason, does the thing where Thanksgiving dinner is at 1 p.m. Drives me bonkers. I'm like, so lunch? That's lunch. My dad's like, no, it's dinner. I'm like, no, that's lunch. But what kills me is I'll eat like a normal meal.
Like now that's their dinner, like at that time now, or?
Oh yeah, at 1 p.m. And then he doesn't want to eat. No, my dad like now.
I'm not saying they're old, but I think that older people start eating.
Oh, my parents are old. You can say they're old.
No, I'm just saying like older people, I think that they start eating a little different.
But no, ever since I was a kid, they eat Thanksgiving dinner at like 1 p.m.
Oh, wait, you're talking about for Thanksgiving? Yeah, no, that all counts. That's all good. 1 p.m.'s all right. Start moving around.
I know, and then other people are like maybe 6 or 7. And I'm like, oh my God, no.
We started all this yesterday, man. We're eating now.
So the first Thanksgiving was about 3 days of festivities, and it really did combine the Native Americans of the area and the colonizers. Basically, the Puritans or Pilgrims. There were only 50 remaining Mayflower Pilgrims. A lot of them died because they didn't know how to farm in this land. They thought, we know how to farm in England. It'll be exactly the same. It's not exactly the same. And they struggled. And so a lot of them died due to disease, hardships, starvation. And the Wampanoag leader, Massasoit, basically took pity on them and said, Huh?
Sad though.
It is sad. And I mean, they lost a lot of people. So they are incredibly grateful. Massasoit basically was like, I have to help these poor white people. Like, they're not going to make it through the winter. So he brought his people and a lot of food and over the days and kind of built that relationship. And it was a very peaceful dinner. So that's where I say, I'm not actually ruining Thanksgiving. What I want to ruin is we romanticize it as though after that Thanksgiving, everything was hunky-dory and everything went great. Unfortunately, in reality, things went downhill very quickly. Massasoit's son was named Metacomet. If you know your US history, you may know him as King Philip. Not only was he not a king, I don't know where they got the name Philip from. They didn't even try. Yeah, they just said, got it, you're Philip now, King Philip. So that's why I say people like me have a long history of refusing to learn names. And I'm like, we can do it, come on.
I don't like it. Your name's Bob.
Your name's Philip now. So he tried to kind of keep that relationship going, but it divulged, it disintegrated, and he was killed in 1676. Now, I'm not going to get super graphic, but it is a little awful. It's very awful. But what happened to him after he was murdered? The colonizers took his body and basically cut him up. The man that killed him kept his right hand as a souvenir, and they put his head on a spike where it stayed for a few decades outside of the fort, basically as a warning to his people of, this is how we're going to treat you. His wife and children were sold into slavery. So they decimated his family and him and his, like.
You deserve it.
And then we wonder why this crap.
Right. And then we wonder, like, but that's the thing is, it was a way to treat him and his people. And we have a tendency to gloss over
I thought
that.
you were saying this guy did it.
No,
Oh, okay.
happened to him.
That's why I said he deserved it, just to clarify. My bad.
No, they should have just killed him.
I thought we were killing this guy and I was okay with it.
No, you're good. You're good. So that's why it's kind of unfortunate that we kind of romanticize it. And we need to understand that while the first Thanksgiving may have actually been peaceful, unfortunately, what came next was things like Manifest Destiny, the Trail of Tears, reservations, and boarding schools. So I'm not here to tell you, hi.
I was all, he poked his head. He poked his head on that side.
Oh, yep, yeah. Again, I'm loud enough. People can find me. So all of that is not to say you're not allowed to celebrate Thanksgiving. I'm going to come over to your house this November and say, you better not. No, not at all. There's
nothing wrong with the truth though.
Right. Yeah, we do need to understand the truth. We can still celebrate Thanksgiving. Even if you don't want to celebrate that first Thanksgiving, it's a federal holiday. Have time with your family and friends. Yeah, I do that on holidays I don't celebrate, but if I get the day off.
Celebrate it and you're like, oh, let's give back what we can and help people. And that's what it's supposed to be. And then you educate your kids and stuff like, this isn't what actually happened. But
Absolutely, I agree. I think what always bugged me with it Thanksgiving is you had this very like glossing over it. And then what drove me nuts is, as much as I participated a few times, Black Friday was always this weird, like, Thanksgiving is about love and family. And then the second it turns 3 a.m., consume. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Our family coming out.
It is the Mayflower family. It's ours. We're going to this Macy's and take everything.
it's just in our blood, I guess.
You go that way, I'll go this way.
The first Black Friday I ever did with my sister, we'd never done one before. And it was back when Black Friday started at like 5 a.m. So we had to wait in line. They finally let us in. It was just a Target. She literally took off running and everyone was laughing because I said, where are you going? And she stopped and she said, I don't know, I got excited. And I'm like, okay, come back and get a cart. But it made the Target employees laugh because she just took off. I'm like, I was like, we don't even have a plan yet.
I'm in it.
Yeah, she was a Marine. She was game face on. She was ready. So manifest destiny, you may have heard before, but what it is basically a widely held belief in the 1800s that it was divinely destined for white settlers to expand across North America, not just to live, but to reshape North America in an agrarian lifestyle. Agrarian from agriculture, just meaning relating to agriculture. So I believe I have an image, I do on the next slide, which really shows the images of what this can look like and the idea that we were bringing salvation to these poor Native Americans, and really pushing them out, either pushing them off the land completely, or if they stayed, trying to get them to convert to a different religion, a different language, and a different way of life. So manifest destiny basically said, first, the special virtues of the American people and their institutions are so divine and special, they must be protected in all rights. Two, it was the mission of the United States to, and look at the language, redeem and remake the West in the image of agrarian America. And that all of this was an irresistible destiny. Now, I say that not to say that nobody is ever destined by God to do things. But what I do mean is it's hard to argue with a group of people if you're saying, hey, you shouldn't do blank. And they say, well, God told me to. I don't know how to argue with that. Like, I don't know how to realistically argue, like, well, you bring him here and let me hear it from him. It's not going to happen. Like, yeah. So it's really hard to argue with a group of people that think it's their God-given right to do whatever. Look, I'll bring up COVID again. I will admit, face masks were annoying as hell. I hated them.
I was making faces on
I never.
Okay, I got in the habit of talking to myself. And I don't think I ever got out of that habit. And now I don't have a face mask and I'm just muttering in my ear, like.
making them at people, but I would just go like, like do things and then it's like, ugh.
But look how angry some people got about them. Not just saying I don't want to wear it, but like,
Oh yeah.
my God-given right to breathe my germs on you. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, technically it is, but I'd prefer if you didn't.
I wasn't wearing those things.
I'm not, actually, the funny.
They turned it into like a political thing.
Yes.
And it was not even necessary.
I just don't feel like the masks aren't actually going to stop anything from happening.
We know that. Yeah, we know that. But like,
There's
it's
no
like,
reason to
remember what she
actually-
said about respect your friend? Remember when it was just about respecting.
That still.
So like me, I knew if I wear it, I was still gonna get sick. Or if it was gonna, like, it's like a seatbelt. An accident, right? I can wear my seatbelt and still something can happen.
I just
to me.
don't understand how everybody actually thought a mask is going to stop airborne anything.
Both sides were just scared. So like one side was saying, well, you're not gonna put fear in me and I have to wear this mask. And the other side was just like, well, we don't have a cure. We don't know what to do. So the best we
We
could
gotta do something.
let's just wear a mask to show that we're like respecting and trying to
You know what's frustrating is the exact same debate happened in 1918 with the Spanish flu. Half of the, I mean, like, it just came full circle. Half of the country was like, we should mask up. And the other half was like, it's my God-given right to not do it. And so you had the butting heads. So watching it happen again, I was like, and time is a flat circle. I'm like,
I was just saying, like, I'm always in the middle.
Yeah.
Like I always understand the side that
You're
don't
an
want to wear it.
independent thinker like we're supposed to be. Everybody
Yeah.
should be.
I understand the people that don't want to wear it and I understand the people that just said just
I can see both sides. That's okay. I sidetracked us. I was just going to show you this image. You don't have to like memorize the image, but what it is basically manifest destiny. It's called American Progress, painted in 1872.
I've seen this before.
Yeah, this isn't like an art appreciation class, but to kind of point out. So this floating white lady, which sounds silly, but she doesn't have wings. She's not an angel. She's just a floating white lady. She is supposed to be the spirit of America. Notice though, the spirit of America looks very white and blonde. She is traveling east to west. With her, she's bringing a school book, telegraph wires, ships, trains, agrarian lifestyle, and she's pushing out into the dark, scary part, Native Americans and wild animals. So it really is this idea that we should be pushing them out. And if they stay, they have to live our lifestyle. That came into law in the 1830s. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 was passed by President Andrew Jackson. So many Native Americans still hold a grudge against President Jackson. He's been dead for over a century. Some of them hold so much of a grudge that certain reservation shops, if you pay in cash, they won't let you pay with a 20. They're like, I don't want that man in my register. And I'm like, now that is a grudge. That is a long grudge. So this was forced relocation of approximately 60,000 Native Americans from their ancestral land in the southeastern US over west of the Mississippi. So if you've ever wondered why Oklahoma has a really wide variety of Native American heritage and different nations, that was the dumping ground. Oklahoma, before it was Oklahoma, was just called Indian Territory. Now, spoiler alert, there were already Indians living there. And then they took all these other Native Americans and just shoved them onto reservations in Oklahoma. And some of these groups don't get along. They haven't gotten along for a long time. And now suddenly you're saying, figure it out, live on this reservation together. And you're like, cool, well, our great-great-grandfathers and all the way down the line have hated each other, but sure, this will go great. It did not go great. Many of these Native Americans traveled over 5,000 miles, and most of them were on foot. It is called the Trail of Tears because not only were they losing their ancestral land where they've lived for thousands of years, they also lost a lot of people. A lot of people perished from cold, disease, the general hardships of walking 5,000 miles. I will say my parents are old. Don't tell him I said this, but my dear sweet father, he'll be 80 this year. He is convinced he's as spry as a 30-year-old. However, walking anywhere with him, I have to slow down because he just kind of shuffles and he'll get there. Give him a minute, he'll get there. And I have to stand behind him slow down, Stephanie. I bring that up not to make fun of him, but to say, I'm not super active and I'm not in the best shape for sure. But if I had to walk 5,000 miles over many, many days, as long as I had resting, could I do it? Yeah, I'm going to be sore. I'm probably going to have injuries. I'm going to complain the entire time, but I could probably do it. Versus somebody like my dad, that would be incredibly taxing on his little old man body. Don't tell him I said that. But I would worry about him. I would probably try to manufacture some sort of wagon or something for him to ride in. But a lot of them that couldn't, they were passing away. Estimated deaths range between 13,000 and just under 17,000 people. The reason why we don't have a concrete number is if you died on the Trail of Tears, it wasn't a permanent grave because we didn't have time to go find a grave site and a tombstone and a GPS tracker of where to come back to. Instead, you just had to get off the trail, go and bury your dead, take a moment, and then get right back in the line. The same thing honestly happened with births as well. A lot of people were born on the Trail of Tears. So it is a very heartbreaking moment in our history. This is just kind of a map of the routes. Some did luck out and take a little bit of a boat ride, but most of them traveled by foot. There is an artist's rendition of the Trail of Tears where you can see how it was just miles and miles of people walking and riding horses and wagons. You mentioned the Irish. So 1830 was the Indian Removal Act. and then the Trail of Tears happened. The Choctaw Native Americans were moved from the southeastern states over to Oklahoma. They lost their land, a lot of their belongings, and a lot of their people. They did not have a lot of money. Then what happened in 1847 is the Irish potato famine. A lot of Irish people were dying, and they called out for aid. Now, many countries sent money or resources, but the nation that shocked them was the Choctaw Nation. They scrounged together, I think, about $150, which was a lot of money at the time, and sent it over. Now, Ireland got way bigger gifts, but that $150 to the Irish people like warmed their hearts because they knew these people just lost everything. And for the Choctaw, they were saying, yeah, we did just lose everything, and you're actively losing everything, and we know how hard that is. Here's a little extra. It has become such a tale between the Irish and the Choctaw that back during COVID, the Navajo Nation, while a different nation, still Native Americans, they did a GoFundMe to try and raise some money to try and get resources and grocery to a lot of their elders and people that couldn't leave their house because of the 2-week lockdown, the 2-week lockdown. They raised a few $1 million because Ireland got a hold of the GoFundMe and the Irish people donated in droves. And they said like, yeah, it's not the exact same nation, but we're kind of paying it forward. And they said like, this is a relationship we're going to keep for generations. So I wanted to end on a happier note.
Yeah, there's a beautiful memorial put up in.
Yes, with the feathers. Gorgeous. Yeah.
It's really cool.
I know, I'm like uplifting story and now something bad again. Sorry. It's a roller coaster.
No.
But I will try to give some more upbeat things and I try to end on an upbeat note. So something else that's bad in our history are American Indian boarding schools. So in the 1860s, we started creating these boarding schools where Native American children were sent and they lived at the schools, hence the boarding. In these schools, one of the main slogans started in the Carlisle School is kill the Indian, save the man. And what they meant was to kill the Indianness out of them. You can see the little boys on the top when they came into the school on the left and when they were in the school for a while on the right. Their hair has been shorn. Yep, cut all their hair off, which is religious and spiritual to Native American people. Cut their hair, made them change their clothing, made them speak English, made them practice Christianity. Now, if you are an Indigenous person that wants to convert to Christianity and learn English of your own free will, awesome. Yeah, go for it. Do whatever makes you happy. When we're forcing them by threat of violence, that is when it's an issue. So many of these kids were physically beaten and abused. One of the stories I heard was he was a generation older than me talking about his grandma who went to the boarding schools. And she said one of the main punishments if they heard her speak her native language was they would make her kneel on uncooked rice. Which is super painful. And I've never had to do it longer than a second because I'm a weirdo that wanted to know how painful. Like, I know that sounds painful, but I wanted to know how painful.
It's like stepping on a Lego.
Yeah, one time I was going to cook some rice. And so I took some uncooked and sprinkled it down and I lasted about 2 seconds. I knelt down and went, holy crap. Okay. Yeah. Good God. Really painful.
That was to your nerves.
Unfortunately, so many kids were beaten so badly that it was very common for these boarding schools to have cemeteries. Call me crazy. I don't think an elementary school should need a cemetery. I know, weirdly enough, that's probably political nowadays, but I don't think there should be a need for one of those. Unless it's something like disease that goes through, but physical violence,
That
no.
would be more like a memorial.
Exactly, yeah. Where anthropologists are trying to help now, which is, it's a little late, but we're trying to kind of repair that relationship. A lot of these graves are unmarked. And so what we're doing is partnering with the local tribes, going through, using our technology to locate the graves, disinter the remains, make sure all the parts are there, figure out who they belong to, and then repatriate the remains. So if they're Choctaw, they can be buried on Choctaw land. If they're Ojibwe, they can be buried on Ojibwe land. And it's a great way to try and kind of heal that relationship. It doesn't undo the damage, but it can at least be a glimmer of hope. Yeah.
Stuff like that privately funded, or is it like funded by the government? Or
Probably, yeah, probably a mix of both. But a lot of times it'll be
free, right? Once they dig them up.
just free. No, I wish it was free, but
Free, but you know, like whatever they have to put on it or.
yeah, then they can build if they need to or something like that. So yeah, a lot of it ties into CRM where archaeologists they get the like, we're gonna build a freeway through here, and then they find out like, holy crap, it's a cemetery. You gotta disinter everybody and figure out what to do with them.
That turns into an expensive job real quick.
My friend that works in CRM, I foolishly said, oh, is it exciting when you find a human remains? And she goes, no, are you kidding me? It's more paperwork. We hate it. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think of the bureaucracy of it. You're right. Yeah, that's not exciting.
You know, sadly, I wonder how many are like, oh, I don't want to report this and just left the remains there.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Like, it sucks, but I feel like it's had to have happened.
I agree with you. Yeah, like I want to say, no, it's never happened, but realistically it may have. Yeah, it may have.
It's too much paperwork. Who cares about their family, you know?
That's how you get the movie Poltergeist. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And sometimes it's not that I don't think that, not all the time, it's not that they don't care. Sometimes it's just like, well, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah. Especially if you don't have the funding, you're like.
Or it was like, oh, like, shit, I don't know. What are we
Now
supposed to
we
do?
have to reach out to all these different places, try to get grants and scholarships. Ships.
Now, looking at activism in the 1960s and 70s, in the 60s, we had the civil rights movement. And so basically, Black Americans paved the way and kind of, if you think of like, rather than paving the way, but like making a wake in a pool, they kind of made the path. And then like second wave feminists, Native American activists, everybody was like, get on board, like quick, while the momentum's there. And they learned from the African Americans as well of like sit-ins, protests like that. So we saw an influx in Native American activism. They had an ally in hippies. Now it's a double-edged sword. Hippies love a good protest, so they will show up and protest with you. But stereotypically, a lot of hippies also overly romanticize Native Americans, where they thought every single Native American was like Disney's Pocahontas, talking with the trees and magical, mystical. Yeah, so it kind of a double-edged sword. They were romanticizing it into a stereotype, but they were also willing to fight the good fight with them. So a good ally. We saw the creation of the American Indian Movement, or AIM, where they did a lot of occupization is not a word, Stephanie. I tried to say occupied, an occupation. But they occupied different locations, including Alcatraz, Mount Rushmore, which if you're unaware, Mount Rushmore, I hate it so much.
When that happens, just say it's, your brain's just so full of knowledge and it just like
Yes,
it's all together.
so smart.
Yes. All right.
Good, thank you.
Welcome.
A bit on my ADHD, but
That too.
But I mean, like the instructor.
Yeah, it's because I'm so smart. That's
I was like thinking about this word and this word at the same time, and it's
too much.
I hate how our brains move faster than our mouths ever can.
Yeah.
All the time. So you gotta constantly.
Especially when I'm writing, I'm like.
And you look and you're like, I missed half a paragraph.
I grab my phone
Then you
and
go
look
back and try to get it, and then you forget about what you were writing before. So
Yeah,
then
after I
you just-
record.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So Mount Rushmore, the four white guys, are carved into the sacred Black Hills that the Lakota people are still pissed off about, and I don't blame them.
That's
Yeah.
bad.
Sacred Black Hills that they call like the four grandfathers, and they instead said, we're gonna carve four white dudes into the side.
I was very disappointed when I went and seen Mountain.
I mean, it's huge if you're close to it, but you have to be so far away that it's like tiny. Like, yeah. So it's disappointing all around.
You in all the pictures you see growing up, you're like, this is a massive mountain. Yeah.
It's a fake picture.
Yeah.
It was a blew up picture.
Definitely blown up. Maybe.
Now, this lady is Sasheen Littlefeather, and if you know her, she was an activist and a model in, what year was it? Yeah, it was 1970s. So Marlon Brando was up for Best Actor at the Oscars for The Godfather, and everybody said he was a shoo-in to win, and spoiler alert, he did win. But he didn't go to the Oscars. He sent Sasheen Littlefeather instead. He instructed her to dress in her full traditional regalia, and he gave her a written letter to read. If he won, she was supposed to go up and accept the Oscar and read this letter, all being very critical about Hollywood's depiction and treatment of Native Americans. What happened is the Academy said, absolutely not. He won the Oscar. She went up to accept the award. When she started to say the speech, they played her off, meaning they made the music louder and louder until no one could hear her. She did read the speech at a press conference, but for years, the Academy never apologized. What is kind of serendipitous is she unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. Literally months before she passed away, the Academy officially apologized and said, hey, that was a dick move. I think they had better words than that. But they're like, that was mean. That was rude. We should have let you give your speech and we're sorry. Is it a little too late? Yeah, but at least they got it to her
Before she died.
Yeah, I'm like, good for Sasheen for getting her apology. Like 40, 50 years late, but she got it.
It sucks when, I don't know, she wanted to be this big person and lead a movement, and she just, how many times in history has it getting shut down like that?
Yep. Now, media representation is something that drives me a little bonkers. They redid the movie The Lone Ranger. Well, it was a TV show, and then they did the movie The Lone Ranger. And what kills me is they had the opportunity to say, hey, the character of Tonto, in the old school Lone Ranger, it was basically a slightly racist stereotype, or maybe very racist stereotype of Native Americans. Hollywood had the option to say, let's hire a Native American actor. There's a bunch of them. Let's have them represent their actual Indigenous heritage. Let's do it right. And instead they said Johnny Depp, which Johnny Depp might be a good actor. In my opinion, I think this one was a little lazy because to me, at least, it felt like Jack Sparrow with a dead bird on his head. And I mean, I'm not an actor, so maybe it was really hard to get out of that character. I don't know.
I saw it too. It was like voodoo all over again.
Yeah, I was like, that's just Jack Sparrow on land with a dead bird. Also, there's no Native American tribe that wore full head dead birds on their head. So frustrating. We see it a lot in language. I hear a lot of people, especially my generation, talk about their spirit animal. I don't use that term because I'm not Indigenous. Realistically, many Native American tribes do have some sort of like totem where they say, I feel a connection to this animal, or I have genealogical relation to this animal. But the term spirit animal got kind of co-opted. Realistically, like you can say, I really vibe with this animal. We don't have to say spirit animal. I'm not going to go out and yell at you if you do, but that's why I don't say it. The others that frustrate me is savage or redskin. Thankfully, Washington has changed from the Redskins. Yeah.
About the, I have a lot of Indian friends, and they like take pride in their red skin, and like we're upset when they.
I know I got.
I've literally never met a Native American.
I have.
Redskin.
No, like, no, like for
I'm not saying like no.
like,
I'm just
it's a character trait that they have. Like that's like maybe it's one of the reverse psychology things they do to like not give people
Mexican
power.
beaners. And the Mexican goes, well, yeah, I'm a proud beaner then, you know?
Yeah, that's what
Something
it's
like that.
probably.
I would say is if they want to call themselves that, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna use that word.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Part of it is because of the history. We used to literally offer a bounty for red scalps. We were encouraging non-Indigenous people to go out and murder Native Americans of any age, didn't matter if they were criminals, and you could turn in the red skin for $250, which was a lot of money at that time. Yeah, like a lot of money. So a lot of terrible people took that option and said, I'm gonna go murder people and get paid for it. So that is why the majority of Native Americans that were pushing for changing that name were like, hey, we don't love most of the mascots, but especially that one. So yeah, it has a lot of weight to it. Now, I will say it's not exactly the same, but I think of the reclamation of the word and identifier of queer in the LGBTQ community. A lot of the youths, the younger people today, self-identify as queer. But I have to caution them because they'll use queer as like an overarching term. And I think that's fine. I'm not saying we're not allowed to do that. But where I urge caution is queer used to just be a slur. So if you're talking to an elder in the community, yeah, if you're talking to an elder in the LGBT community and you say, well, you're a fellow queer, and they say, remind yourself that that may have been what was yelled at them and when they were beaten, or yelled at them when they were assaulted. You know, they may have a different weight to it. So that's where I say be cautious. I think eventually it probably will become the umbrella term, but I think it's kind of similar.
But they're not getting.
Yeah, that's why I say not the
Not
same,
here,
but
but some
No, I know what
countries,
you meant.
yeah.
a lot of countries they are getting, not a lot, but they're like Muslim countries.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I always think of the comedian John Mulaney, who is a white guy, for context. And he said, he has a bit where somebody says, they were talking about a slur and they said, it's as bad as the N-word. And I think it stuck with me because yeah, he was making a joke, but he said, hey, if you're ever comparing two words and one of them you won't even say, that's the worst word. And I was like, ooh, that, yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Like, if you won't even say the word, probably, that's probably the worst word. So I got sidetracked. We got hella sidetracked, but that's okay.
You were right though. I got, you know, yeah.
I'm, again, the
We're good at that.
ADHD, I'm good at getting sidetracked. Yeah, yeah.
You probably thought about your baby at home, you know, like real quick, and then you just came back to like.
I was like, wait, what? Oh, sorry. So the additional article, and then I'll kind of start wrapping up a little bit, is called Land Back, Indigenous Sovereignty as Care Through Responsibility and Relationship. Academics love a super long title. We love it. This is written by Carell Hall of the Department of Anthropology at Rutgers University. It was published in 2024, so relatively new in the grand scheme of things. What this covers is land previously owned, I'm going to use air quotes and quotes on the actual slide, owned by Indigenous Americans. We say owned in quotation marks because, like I previously said, a lot of Native Americans historically have not had the same concept of ownership of land like we as Westerners do. We think I can go to a realtor and say, I want this plot of land, here's my money, and they say, here's your deed, you own that land. Now, I'm not a landowner right now, but it can get tricky. Sometimes you can own land that the government can still come in and say, actually, we're widening the road, so we're going to take part of your yard. And you say, but it's my yard. And they say, kind of. I say that because a friend of mine loves her trees. Oh, I felt so bad for her. She bought a house partially because of the trees. She woke up one day and somebody through the city cut them all down. And they said it was for like something being put through, but she was standing in her front yard like, my tree just happened. Oh yeah, and it's just a butcher job. I'm like, oh, your poor trees. But most Native Americans, it was more of like, we're stewards of the land. We should be taking care of the land rather than just ownership. Their sovereignty is oftentimes not recognized by the US federal government. But, or I'm sorry, I didn't even introduce. She looks specifically at the Lenape and Nachakok people. And she looks at the fact that federally, they are not recognized. But even though the federal government says, no, they don't count as a sovereign nation, the state of Delaware and New Jersey still has a local level relationship with them, because at least on the state level, they recognize, yeah, they are a real tribe. They've been here longer than us. The federal government just hasn't caught up yet. So they still have a close relationship with the city governments. What this article focuses on is chestnut trees. So we do have chestnut trees in the US, but most of them are not what was originally indigenous to North America. Chestnut trees were once plentiful in the eastern US. Unfortunately, what happens as more and more people travel, we bring with us diseases, invasive plants, invasive bugs. Look at the invasive zebra mussels that are in the Great Lakes. White people, I'm just kidding. As an invasive species. It's my own people. I can poke fun a little bit. No, I'm sorry.
I say the same thing though when I'm talking about.
That's why I'm like, it's my own people. I'm allowed to.
Look at me and I'm like,
Only like 20%, 30% of me can say it, so.
Okay. No, there's a lot of invasive species. In the south, kudzu is like taking over. It is an invasive vine and it is choking out a lot of the plants. So what happened in the 19th century is we accidentally brought over a blight from Asia. It infected the chestnut trees like crazy and spread all over the eastern US. So we took out a lot of the mature chestnut trees. The Lenape and Nachakok people held a ceremony around one of the last surviving mature chestnut trees in the US. At this ceremony, they basically wanted to show that the relationship between them and nature still exists, and that they're still trying to be stewards of the land, trying to respect the land and get everybody else to respect the land.
quick question. Do you think, it's probably a little off, but it's just random. Do you think that there is a lot of people out there that think harming nature or the land or whatever isn't gonna do anything to the world? Like, do they really? I just want to know. Do you think that they really do think that it won't? It won't.
Or they don't care because they're getting a financial gain from it.
I think that, and I think I don't want to get like
I know, but I just want.
anti-religious.
No.
There is a lot of people that genuinely think the worse we get the world, the faster the second coming will happen. But we have to make the world terrible first. And I'm like, well, you're succeeding. I don't know if you're going to get the result you want, but
So there's people that really see.
no, there are some people. Now, I'm not saying everybody, but there are some people out there that genuinely want to make the earth uninhabitable. And it's driving me bonkers because I'm like, but I live here. I live here. Yeah, it's frustrating. And I think there's also a lot of people that think
What? Because I never, you said they can hurry for this.
like the Armageddon.
For whatever their religion
Second
believes in,
Christ
coming back or coming or this or that. They think the second coming's gonna come back.
Stupid. I didn't think.
Well, and I don't think that's the vast majority. I think the vast majority of people just think, well, it doesn't affect me right now, so not gonna affect me ever. And I'm like, it is gonna affect you. We've already had like 6 tornadoes. It's April. It's affecting all of us. Like,
I'm happy Kansas has prepared me for this.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. So, like, I wonder. Well, I mean, I was just wondering what you thought. Like, do people really think that it won't? That
I think some people genuinely think it's not gonna affect them personally, so they're like, well, No big deal.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I know. And then the rest of us again are like, but I live here and it is affecting me.
Wish we still had oxygen producers like
I
this.
do too. Yeah, this is what a modern chestnut tree looks like. This is how big they used to be. Here are the people. Here are the giant chestnut trees. So gorgeous, huge, old growth trees.
Trees.
Whenever I give you a quote, you don't have to memorize it, but it says the leaders of this endeavor explained how important it was to reclaim the land, to protect their ancestors, resting in cemeteries, and make space for native plants and animals to flourish and nurture future generations by removing problematic invasive species and trash. So they're big activists around cleaning up pollution and cleaning up the area. So looking at the land back movement, it's a movement to reclaim land stolen, not technically about kicking us non-Indigenous people off. Although, like I joked, if they want to give me a free trip to Europe, I might take it. I don't know. I might be like, can I bring my cat? Okay, then good. This is what matters. So
I don't think whatever was done back then should be done now. I know, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
No more Trail of Tears.
yeah, no, that's why I'm like, that's not what they're
I know.
trying to do. And but a lot of non-Indigenous
Statement.
people hear land back and that's what they think they want. They're like, oh my God, they're kicking us all off. And I'm like, where would we go? It's been like 600 years. There's too many of us now. I'm like, it doesn't work that way. So really what it is about putting
Having the respect and.
having the respect for it and putting the Indigenous people in charge of the land they do have. So like recently, the Supreme Court in 2020 ruled that much of Oklahoma belongs to the Muskogee people. So right now on reservations, even though they say they're a sovereign nation, usually they cannot try criminals that are not Indigenous. Meaning if you are non-Indigenous and go on a reservation and commit a crime, most of it has to be kicked to the FBI. And unfortunately, historically, the FBI hasn't really cared too much about those
Unless
crimes.
it's sort of drastic, crazy. Case.
Yes. So this is basically saying, okay, if somebody non-Indigenous commits a crime on Choctaw land, Choctaw Tribal Council is allowed to bring them to court and actually punish them how they see fit. Now, they're not going to let them do like capital punishment and stuff like that, probably if you litter, it's not going to get that drastic, but they can kind of decide your punishment.
They can make the fees a lot more just because or this or that.
So even though I technically have a couple of slides, I'm going to end there before I get into another topic because we only have like 3.5 minutes left. So we only have a couple more weeks where we meet in person. We will meet in person next week for week 14, the week after for week 15, and then that will be it because the following week, week 16 is final exam day. And I'm not going to throw more information at you one last minute during week 16. So week 16, I won't see you. So I will only see you 2 more times. Week 16 is our final exam.
We'll just do it online again.
You'll just do it online. Yeah, unless you want an in-person exam.
But 2 more times.
2 more times. 2 more weeks.
So what, we gonna do some sort of like potluck or something? Everybody wanna bring a snack? Yes.
Good call that.
Someone's paying attention.
But no, you are free to go, everyone. You have a good one, and I will see you next week.
All right.
Tomorrow it's supposed to be in the 50s, so.
Going to the beach one day this week. Go ahead.
Morning was so cold.
Even this room right now, like I can't get over it.
What?
Yeah.
Chair is like,
Chilly.
my legs, I kept trying to hide.
Use some cold.
Good. I survived.
Make it
You said I'll
better.
email you that.
Yeah, absolutely.